Hey everyone, it's a dose of Dr. Drew.
Hey, here we go. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get a look at things real quick. Everyone pile on in. David's first. Woohoo. Donna, Jeannie. Mark's not here yet. He'll be here in a second. Hey, Corey, what's up? Quickly. Give you guys a second to come in here. We'll have Mark Geragos in here in just a minute. Hi, Brittany. Hi, Elsa. Yeah, I will give you some updates. I will give you that. The University of Washington, the COVID-19.healthdata.org has updated their graphs today and frankly confused me a bit. They have a new category on their graphs. They're predicting almost twice the deaths that they were predicting by August, which is kind of a striking change in their what they were doing. The deaths per day are falling. Everything's getting better. But they added a new category in most states. Let me say, look at California, for instance. And it is essentially sort of a guess at the number of actual cases versus the proven cases. So they have these two categories of confirmed infections and estimated infections, which I find confusing. I don't know what I assume they're basing that data on the serologies coming out of Stanford and USC. But boy, to make firm predictions seems kind of wild to me. Like, for instance, in California today, at least when they last updated, which was on May 1st, confirmed infections are 1,800. Estimated infections were at 6,400. Now, I've always said that there was probably about 5 times more infections than we were documenting. So they seem to be putting that into a specific prediction grid of some type. That's a significant change in what they've been doing, so I don't know what that's all about. They have not said anything about it that I have found. And based on that, they have increased their death, the speculation of more deaths, yet have not increased the hospital resource utilization, but have sort of stretched it out more. And I don't know if that's based on the fact that things are getting opened back up or not. Hi there, Karen, Northern California. Has Illinois peaked? We're way past peaks on everybody, but the peak is no longer the issue. The issue is, are we going to have more difficulty going forward as we open up? Yeah, Illinois has been at its peak in terms of resource utilization. Let's see if they give Illinois a estimated case. Yes, deaths per day is dropping. Everything's kind of peaked in Illinois. Now, they have this same graph of estimated infections and confirmed infections. The estimated infections seem to be falling rather considerably, and the proven infections is sort of plateaued. It's been about the same, maybe a little increase in the last few days. So estimated infections, 9,900, confirmed infections, 2,600. But, again, expected to go towards zero in July. And that's really where most of these graphs are going. Joan, they're mortifying to you, say? Why? Tell me why. Let's see, you guys. We're going to have Mark Geragos in here in a few minutes. Brittany, your governor says we aren't going to peak until mid-May. That's Illinois. Well, this suggests you are already there, and you've certainly peaked in terms of overall cases. You're at your peak, and essentially at your peak in terms of resource utilization. But in terms of the reason there was all this effort, flattening the curve so we don't exceed our resource utilization, Illinois, by these graphs, appear to be nowhere near any risk of that sort of problem. Though there's maybe some concern about the number of ICU beds that might be needed, but I'm sure you could ramp that up if you need it. Let's see. Yes, George, I saw that. In fact, Christina and I talk about that in an upcoming episode. G-State is on COVID overload. I think everybody is. I think as a result, people are really pouring out into the out of doors. Now, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because research has shown there's been only one documented case, and that was in China, of outdoor transmission. All other cases have been indoor transmission, which is interesting. There's also good evidence that the virus dies very quickly out in sunlight. So outdoor looks like a safe place for us to be, but we shouldn't be outdoors without masks, and we shouldn't be outdoors shoulder to shoulder. So that seems stupid to be doing that. That seems silly to me. CDC says antibodies don't necessarily mean you're immune. They don't frame it that way. We don't know for sure that antibodies mean you're immune, and we don't know for how long. But you can actually order virus neutralizing antibodies, which suggest you are immune. So most people don't have that test done, so they can't come out and say, we're guaranteed you're immune. They can't do that because this is a new illness and we don't know for sure. Is a second wave a concern? Yeah, it's a concern. Of course it is. But I mean, it's not going to be like the first wave. It's going to be something different because we are on top of it. Brian, be more specific, and I'll be happy to address your concerns. Direct sunlight or indirect sunlight? I only saw the data on direct sunlight, so I don't know about indirect sunlight, except to say that the virus does not like heat and humidity. So indirect sunlight would be helpful, but I think direct sunlight is very, very quickly. Let's see. Yes, Anthony, that is a true statement, but that's kind of a complicated thing.
What is it?
Looking at true deaths, the acceleration of deaths over our baseline. In other words, because we're all sitting at home, the death rate in this country dropped rather dramatically. So COVID filled in a lot of that, and then XC went up above it. Question is, what is that percent, or what is that number above the anticipated death rate for a normal May 4th, or whatever this is, May 5th? This is May 4th or May 5th? Help me, somebody. May 4th.
Nobody knows what day it is.
Mark Geragos will be on in a minute, and we will not be talking about global health. Thank you for that insightful comment. Hi, Anna Marie. You doing okay there? You staying well in New York? And New York just got a completely different situation than the rest of the country.
What happened?
Well, in terms of, what happened in New York, they had a massive sudden surge.
They did? No, I didn't know that.
New York City?
No, recently?
No, they've been living through that.
I thought you said like recently, like they had a big surge yesterday.
Do I think it's political on part of Newsom forcing beach closures? Seems like Newport Beach was singled out. It's weird that Ventura Beach and San Diego Beach is left open. Laguna Beach has made its own side deal with the governor. I'll be talking to the mayor of Laguna tonight. And we'll see. We'll see what they think. The mayor of Newport Beach, we're talking about beaches in Orange County, where the governor singled them out to remain closed while other beaches remained open. And it seemed like he based it all on a picture, which was a long lens that compressed everybody together, made them look like they were on top of each other. That seems silly when the police in that city said they could easily maintain the social distancing, though people should have masks on if they're getting up out of the beach. CDC lumped COVID, influenza, and pneumonia death together, Kathy. I'm more interested. Tell me more about that. Is that something that's being reflected in those new University of Washington numbers? That's interesting.
I have some news for everyone. Newport Beach has a red tide, so you're lucky you're not there. Yeah,
well, Laguna does too, but we opened the beaches. I'm looking at the COVID deaths at the University of Washington data. They are calling it, let me just make sure they don't call it all respiratory deaths. They're calling it COVID-19 deaths, 134,000. That's a significant uptick from where we were. They're out everywhere in South Carolina, I'm hearing, not playing around. Nikki, about the Dr. Erickson interview. I don't think it was right for him to compare us with Sweden. I think Sweden is an interesting case example, but to make a direct comparison, I think is a big mistake. And he was making some errors on fatality rates in terms of what the percentage of sick people that die versus what the probability of anybody in a given population can die of this thing. Clearly, if we could, I did talk a little bit about Sweden, whoever that is, Kurt. Georgia, I was just looking at that data. So Georgia is sort of our canary in the coal mine, right? Georgia picked the exact wrong moment to open up. So if there is a difference between quarantining and masks and social isolations, we should see it in Georgia. Now, when I look at the predictions from the University of Washington, they are not showing an uptick. which is interesting. In a way, they are conceding. You got to remember, the CDC has never recommended shutdown. CDC has recommended social distancing, 6 feet, masks, washing hands, isolation of sick people. The idea of shutting everybody down is a new idea that was developed in the 2006 Bush administration provisional plan on pandemics based on a high school student's science project. So the idea that this is the way to go, shutting everything down, is not true. It's not scientifically true. It may be superior, but we don't know yet. So it may just be that when we go back to masks and social distancing in the world, there will be no uptick in the cases. So this idea of a second wave may never happen. Now, we will have some upticks, some little outbreaks, but the idea will be to isolate and contain those outbreaks. Jennifer, we're talking about this ICU doctor who said that ARDS is not the primary illness. He was saying that we were focusing on the ARDS due to COVID rather than the inflammatory process due to COVID that was the underlying process. I think most doctors have sort of shifted their emphasis a little bit on that. CDC says 38,000 deaths. That's interesting. It's getting confusing, right? Yeah, the murder hornets, I don't know if you guys were around in the 70s, but killer bees. Murder hornets equal killer bees. That's all I'm going to tell you. Killer bees were going to come and sweep across the country. Every news broadcast every night, killer bees.
There we go.
This is why you cannot cry wolf repeatedly. I don't know. You say killer hornet, I know what you're talking about. I don't know whether to believe it or not. No, China did not create the virus. That's the being on a blood thinner, good or bad for COVID? Lots of blood thinners have been tried. They don't work for the inflammatory clotting problem. Generally speaking, being on a blood thinner probably better than not. The question though is, why do you have a clotting problem? If you have an antiphospholipid syndrome, in my experience, those patients do poorly. So.
Oh, Shelley Sprague's here.
Hi, Shelley. Hi, Shelley. Oh, good. Kirk says, when I was in the psych ward, they had the killer bees on the TV in a psych ward. That's reassuring.
He was happy he was in a psych ward.
Well, but I mean,
because the bees weren't going to get him there.
God. What about CRISPR editing? Would you like to know? I would like to know what you're asking. When patients are on a ventilator, how does this work? And are they sedated? Yes, Brian, they are highly sedated. They are on propofol. I'm hearing feedback in my earpiece.
Oh, that was weird.
Do you remember Michael Jackson's milk? What killed Michael Jackson was propofol. But when you're on a ventilator, you don't have to have a drive to breathe because the machine does that for you. The key is not to be miserable, which it is miserable to be on a ventilator. So they essentially put you to sleep. If you have a colonoscopy, they put you to sleep with propofol. So propofol really will put you out pretty quickly and pretty hard. So you've stocked up on Pepcid. That's another medicine that has been thought of. There's actually there's an androgen receptor site, or a site that's dependent on the androgen system, that they're looking at actually prostate cancer drugs to possibly reduce the availability of that protein that allows the virus to get into cells. That is a large study going on right now. Lots of interesting studies going on. Lots of interesting studies. I think that there will be interesting advances in the next couple of weeks, we should say. What else we got here, guys? Is Mark shown up yet? We're looking for Mark Geragos.
Not yet.
He's coming a quarter after, I guess.
Yeah, he'll come.
Let me look at New Jersey. New Jersey was having a tough time with all of this, so let's see.
It might take a minute to set him up too. So
that's fine.
Because he's coming in cold turkey.
Yeah, New Jersey still. Everyone's on the downslope. It's just the question is, are we peaking out of this thing too soon? That's everybody's question mark. In terms of deaths per day, it's dropping. In terms of overall deaths, it's plateauing. And hospital resource use, you have, you still look like you're stressing the system a little bit. So New Jersey is still the one state that seems to be still having a little bit of problem with making sure they get enough hospital beds. That's interesting. I have not heard anybody reporting on that. Let me look at Massachusetts and Connecticut, because they too had a lot of difficulties with this kind of thing. They are sort of on the downslope of deaths per day. They're going to peak out about 100. and they're nearly there, and they're about the same place New Jersey is, but they are easily meeting their hospital resource demands. Connecticut, which was also stressed. Let me see what's going on in Connecticut. Connecticut is struggling much like New Jersey. So those are still a couple of states to be focused on: Connecticut, New Jersey, and of course New York. But New York looking really good in terms of their numbers. Total cases, however, how can this be? Now let's look at this. Total cases, 3,400. Proven cases, 6,700. Confirmed infections, 600 confirmed, 3,900 estimates. So let's say 704 versus 4,000. Let me look at the hospital bed utilization, because that data did not look quite right to me. Again, we're waiting on Mark. I'm waiting on my computer, which is stuck. There we go. Mark Geragos will be here in a second. We'll just talk about what's going on in the world and what he thinks about it. What did I say? 700 documented cases. So how could it be that there are only 700 cases and they're saying they need 2,400 beds for COVID? So there's something wrong with this data again. How is that possible? 700 documented cases and 2,400, 2,400 beds needed. So there's something weird about the graphics.
Somebody said to turn down the gain because it gets punchy when it gets close to the mic.
Okay, excellent. Can I explain? I don't know about
Thank
that.
you. Dr. Beeps.
Yeah, see, my mic is peaking also.
I'm fixing that too.
It's because Caleb's here today, and he's running the board, so it's we're using the vMix, not the OBS. Mine is always wacky, so. Oh, I see Mark. Wait, he's standing up. Hold on.
All right, we'll have Mark Geragos in here.
He's,
he and Adam Carolla do a podcast called Reasonable Doubt every week. I'm going to be on it probably next week.
Hopefully the sound will work right away.
Susan, they're saying your voice is too low.
I know, because I don't have the good mic.
That is feedback you've not received before.
I have my... Well, I'm on the old mic because Caleb's in my seat. So
is an ECMO machine an alternative to ventilator? They are being used. They're not alternative. They are when you exceed the ability of the body to oxygenate. The lungs don't work. Then you can do extracorporeal oxygenation. That is the ECMO machine.
Oh no. Tell Mark to do it wide. Yeah, right there.
Tell Mark do it wide.
We can't hear him yet.
What
you want to put him on while he's adjusting it?
Okay, hey guys, can we not do this on the air?
I'm sorry.
Okay, yo, what is it? What was the bad news that you felt slammed with? I'd be interested to know, because I think generally it's ambivalent news, but it's all kind of good. I mean, everyone's nervous because people are beginning to pile out of their isolation. But you got to remember, we don't know that isolation is superior to social distancing. We don't know that. Now, isolation is certainly superior to nothing, but they've never studied the difference between social distancing and masks done properly and quarantine. Never been done. So we will find out soon enough. Okay.
All right.
See, Brian, you didn't tell me what the bad news was. I'm interested.
Somebody said it wasn't too low. It's too loud.
Yeah. I'm looking back up through your stuff here while we wait for Mark Geragos to come on in.
Yeah, I think he's about ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
No sound?
He is.
He's ready.
He's ready? Oh, there he is.
Mark Geragos, you there?
Let's see if we can get some sound on it.
Drew, how are you?
Hi, buddy. Thanks for coming in. Oh, Susan's so proud of herself.
I didn't do it. Caleb's here.
She's become like Bart Simpson. I didn't do it. So Mark, how are you getting through the quarantine?
I love the quarantine. My dogs, I was starting with the dog walking. I first broke the golden. The golden passed. He just gave up after 4 weeks. And then Brady was, who's like kind of a mix. Brady lasted about 6 weeks. They used to greet me first thing in the morning when I come downstairs, fight, be so excited about it. Now they run away when I come downstairs.
I've had an ass full of you. Well, I'm glad you like quarantine. That's good. And you're here. Are you here? Were you in New York during any part of this?
No, I'm in LA. All I've been doing is suing the governor, the mayor, insurance companies, and banks.
Well, let's talk about that. This is fantastic. This is why I called you in. So let's start with the governor. What are you suing the governor for?
Well, the governor clearly, as well intentioned as he might be, and for those of you, I'm going to disclose initially for everybody who always says it's political. Yes, my co-counsel on this is Harmeet Dillon, who is I think, a card-carrying Republican. I think I've proudly stated I don't think I've ever voted for a Republican in my life, but we both join in the fact that these emergency powers have stripped the Constitution, have gone way too far. I saw an article, you have to actually, it's almost buried in the LA Times. Yeah, I went on to it, they had embedded the statistics this morning, which gave me some great comfort. More than half the counties in California have, guess how many cases of COVID?
20?
Goose egg. More than half have zero.
Yeah.
So, and you can go look at the statistics. Cal Matters has got it.
Well, here's the thing, Mark. First of all, two things. First of all, I know Harmeet and I know you, and I've never said your names in the same breath ever, ever. So that's extraordinary by itself. But secondly, I was telling these listeners and viewers that you got to understand there is no difference. The CDC did not recommend a lockdown. And do you know where this history of that came from? It's from a high school student's science project in 2006. It's never, you know that?
I've been screaming, probably raised my blood pressure, even though I'm walking every morning, that it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah.
Even the Democratic legislators, believe it or not, we're a one-party state, my party, even the legislators have said that he went a bridge too far. And unfortunately, the mayor started it. Garcetti started it with this kind of usurpation of his emergency powers. There's been nobody's following the science. I mean, I would have, and by the way, I'm not a scientist, I understand, but I've been in enough courtrooms cross-examining enough scientists and doctors to know that you have to ask some questions because generally the whole theories tend to fall apart. And that's been the problem with this. They've stripped, we have stripped our speedy trial rights in California, something that hasn't been done since the Civil War. I mean, we have suspended, basically, we're in kind of a temporary suspension of the writ of habeas corpus. It used to be you had to be in front of a judge within 48 hours if you're arrested. Now they extended that to 1 week. Used to be you were entitled to a preliminary hearing or you're let out of custody. They extended that for 30 days. So these are crazy, crazy things, especially when you consider at the same time that the two most at-risk places for COVID infection and death are, guess where? Prison. In the jails where we're going to keep you, or in the nursing homes, which up until a week ago Friday, they hadn't even outlawed communal eating or dining.
That's right.
It's insanity.
It's insanity. And what they have outlawed is the one environment where there's only been one documented outdoor transmission case in the world. It was in China. So the safest place you can be would be outside in the sunlight. That they outlaw.
Right. And by the way, as you may have heard, our mutual close friend, Adam Carolla, lives down the horse trail from me, and I take the horse trail with great frequency. The Trails Council is now contemplating hiring an armed guard. So it shows you we have just lost our collective minds. Unfortunately, I think it was de Tocqueville who said that the greatest threat of America is never going to be communism. It's tyranny. That's the problem.
Yep, that's exactly right. And the very people that have been calling fascism have become totalitarians. It's really mind-boggling.
I just don't understand it. I don't get it. It's this fear. It's feeding the fear. Then there's, we're both the fathers of millennials. Then there's kind of this appealing to the millennial generation. Hey, you don't ever have to leave your couch. We'll send you a check and phone it in. And I hate to sound like the not in my yard, but give me a break. I mean, when you take a look at it, by the way, you and I both know, were pilloried for saying the same things that now all of the most respected epidemiologists and doctors are agreeing transpired. You were early money and they tried to cancel you 4 weeks ago.
I know, for having an opinion. And all I was trying to get people...
For stating the truth. You said at the time that the fatality rates would not exceed the flu. Guess what? Now all of a sudden you can say that. And by the way, the CDC is not blameless in this. I mean, this lionization of the CDC. I know that you've always been very supportive of them, but at the same time, the CDC has been misstep after misstep. This thing, there's plenty of blame to go around, and we didn't need to drive the car as opposed to driving it off the road. We've driven it into a cement wall for what reason, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, well, two things I would say about the CDC. They screwed up the testing thing. They were the initial rollout of the testing, and they screwed that up. Number one. Number two, they've never said shut things down. They've always said social distancing, masks, and wash your hands, because there's no science anywhere to show that shutting everything down is superior. So why would you?
Well, look, I've talked with doctors, because we're assembling experts. The experts say, and by the way, it's not just my opinion or their opinion, even somebody like Cuomo, who has been lionized, the governor of New York, has said that there may be a law of unintended consequence, that shutting everything down, having a lockdown, actually exacerbated this problem by putting people who were, clearly didn't know at the time, but people who were asymptomatic but were spreaders in with other people,
Yep.
grandparents in with their kids, or if you live in a multi-generational life. We may have just done the reason we may be in the country leading all of the cases and all of the deaths is because we decided to double down on stuff that was not based on science.
Correct. And the only time in medical history that there was a quarantining of a population was in medieval times, when they were scared to go outside, so they'd huddle in their houses, where that made things worse. They were either there with the people with the respiratory illnesses in their house, or the rats and the rat droppings that were transmitting the disease.
Well, by the way, people also were talking, remember all the dire predictions about the homeless population?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the cases there are plenty of cases of it, but to give you an example of just how lawless they were, the mayor, for instance, has been, he shut down and he sent out LAPD to go and charge people criminally who were operating their businesses, their so-called non-essential businesses. They housed a mentally ill woman 2 weeks ago in a motel that they had commandeered in the valley. That woman was tested positive for the coronavirus, and she left. And the reporters were asking the mayor, well, why didn't you send the LAPD out to arrest her? And he says, we don't have that ability. We don't have that. So basically, apparently, the interpretation by the mayor is, we've got the ability to shut down lawfully running businesses who are socially distancing,
right.
But when there's somebody who's demonstrably infected, who's out there, who's mentally ill, there's nothing we can do.
And impaired, and needs other services, we can't help them. That's the craziness. That's consistent with their previous approach to homelessness. You got to give them an A for consistency, which has been total insanity.
Right, that's the only thing that they have been from day one. Mind you, I'm sitting down here in downtown LA as we speak and as we do this. We are surrounded down here at Wilshire and Figueroa by a homeless population that is increasingly mentally challenged and ill. I mean, it's clear that they're mentally ill. The LAPD is deathly afraid to do anything for whatever reasons. It used to be a lot better when the sheriffs were actually patrolling the area when they were doing the metro, but they eliminated that because they wanted to double down on the outdoor insane asylum that we've become downtown.
Right.
And instead of offering mental health services, instead of offering some kind of interdiction, some kind of, we still have 5150. You want to change the law, go look at the Lanterman-Petrus Act. There's all kinds of things they could be doing, but you know what they'd rather do? They'd rather do billion-dollar bond measures where the money sits there, doesn't get spent, and try to equate this with a housing situation where I agree, in 20% it is a housing situation, but in the overwhelming majority, as you know as well as I do, this is a mental health issue.
Absolutely. And by the way, there's an interesting little wrinkle in this, that the gangs stayed inside during the early part of this epidemic because they were afraid of catching the COVID. And that completely dried up the drug supply on the streets. And guess what? The homeless became willing to go to go inside. They became willing to follow direct. So, I mean, the drug problem is a massive, massive piece of this. Number one, and number two,
right.
what I do, the other, forget law enforcement on duly, there's peacefully practicing businesses who are also practicing social distancing. How about the fact that if you're homeless, you can stay outside and do whatever you want, but if you're a tax-paying citizen, we can't let you outside and you have to stay off the beach? What is that?
Well, one of my favorites is a friend of ours who's also a old client of mine, Mia St. John, who has been struggling, and she's got mighty good reasons to be struggling with sobriety. And while alcohol delivery, and mind you, I'm the last guy to condemn alcohol delivery to the house, but alcohol delivery has been deemed essential. And I have restaurants, we can deliver alcohol. However, the police have twice, counted not once but twice, come to her socially distant, less than 10 people, 6 foot apart AA meeting to shut them down and threaten them with criminality.
I'm aware.
And mind you, that's against the backdrop of the World Health Organization, who has said that alcohol can exacerbate or can influence the transmission. And it makes sense because people who have pre-existing conditions or raised blood pressure or all the other things that go along with alcoholism, sometimes obesity, would be at risk. That's
No,
okay,
don't
but
tell me
AA
that.
meetings trying to stay sober.
When this is all over, I really want you mentioned the Lantern and Petrus Act. I want that has to be changed. There is one of the state senators up there, Morlock, is trying to do it, and just to create something where families can help their loved ones that are mentally ill and on the streets. We have to. If we don't change the laws, we can't do anything.
Yeah, for those who don't know it, it was a very well-intentioned act, but like lots of well-intentioned acts, it had unintended consequences. It was to not, for the same reason that we say you can't put somebody who is mentally all there indefinitely in prison, you weren't going to put somebody indefinitely in custody involuntarily. The problem is that it is erred on the side of not allowing families to help their loved ones, and as a direct result, people have died because of it, and it's awful, and it needs to be changed.
That's absolutely right. No, you got to with the Lantern and Petrus and a few other decisions around that time. We overnight went from the hospitalization was determined by need for care. We switched from need for care to harm to self or other. And the whole idea of gravely disabled and unable to care for yourself and even your medical needs, that's just got shrunk more and more and more where people cannot be cared for when they are dying. So we have to change it.
Yeah, and that's the thing people don't understand. This is a life and death issue. Anybody who's ever, and mind you, it hits every family. There isn't anybody out there who doesn't have a loved one who is directly impacted by this and who hasn't had a death connected, in 1 or 2 or 3 degrees of separation. Yep. So it's awful, and it's time we did something about it because it just has so many domino effects.
Well, your friend Mia, who you mentioned earlier, her son died on the streets because she couldn't do anything. He had schizophrenia. He would stop his meds, go on the streets, and there was nothing she could do about it.
And she couldn't get him committed. Then Christoph, her husband, who a lot of people know from Young and the Restless, he ended up basically drinking himself to death. He was a client of mine as well. I talked to him right at the end, 3 weeks before, to get him committed at UCLA. And then somehow UCLA let him out after I talked him into voluntarily checking in himself. And it just broke my heart the morning that happened.
And this is not strictly going on in California. I had the same exact problem with Mindy McCready, the country star. She was sober for a long time, and then she got depressed. Her fiance killed himself. She got severely depressed. She may or may not have been using. Found a place for her in Arkansas to go. Family got together. They brought her. They took her to a program. She was there about 6 hours, and then decided she didn't want to be there. They let her go home. Forget the fact she was depressed, using, and had a history of self-destructive behavior with an arsenal of guns in the home. They sent her home. What do you think's going to happen?
It's a recipe for disaster, and unfortunately, like I said, it's not like anybody mapped this out and wanted it to end up in this kind of death and destruction, but it is the law of unintended consequences, and you have to fix it. You just can't keep throwing money added or this or that. It's the fundamental underpinnings of a system that just has perpetuated itself to the point where it no longer. We have an expression in the law: when the reason for the rule fails, then the rule should fail. This is where the reason for the rule and the rule have failed completely.
Completely. Back to your horse trail guards. I was on the phone with Mr. Corolla, as is my custom now, twice a day, because he can't stop he can't stop talking about how insane.
By the way, and that's very unusual for Adam. For those of us who know Adam,
he is taciturn, but now he's like can't believe what he's seeing in the state particularly, and he was walking on the horse trail, and somebody car pulled up, guy jumps out of the car and goes, "Hey, this is closed down," and of course Adam's retort to the guy was, "Where's your mask?" Because the guy didn't have a mask on. and of course, that guy, being of a certain mindset, his response was, "Where's your mask?" As if that's a justified response to "Where's your mask?" And then at the end, the guy hassled Adam. He's like, yeah, whatever. He goes, "You're right. We got to put up barricades. In fact, why don't you get those tank spikes from Omaha Beach to make sure that we keep the tanks off the horse trail?" And he just walked off. I was dying laughing.
The horse trail is, for those who don't know, it is literally within less than 100 yards from Foothill Boulevard. So you can walk up and down Foothill Boulevard in the hardscrabble streets of La Cañada and walk within 3 feet of people left, right, and center. But somehow, in our infinite wisdom, which shows you the world turned upside down, a horse trail, which nobody is on it, and there's nothing on it but horse defecation, is somehow, that's what we have to block off. We got to put stuff on it, as if somehow that's what's transferring or causing the COVID virus to spread.
And so what do you think it is? What is this insanity? So it seems like our mayor in Los Angeles, Garcetti, he's doing it out of love. It's because of love that he just seems to like, I don't know, flexing this. I don't know what it is. And Newsom, while I really was very signed up with his whole thing to begin with, I thought, okay, it's excessive, but it's swift and sure, and it will work. And he's trying to lead his way through the worst case scenario. I get it. I get why he did it. And then get out of it as soon as you can, instead of, it looks like, trying to put your boot on the neck of people you had political issues with. Is that not what's happening?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, look, I thought Gavin, I still do. I've known him for years. I knew his ex-wife, and I thought he had tremendous goodwill. He really was one of the few guys who was willing to cross the aisle. Yeah. I thought he was just doing a masterful job. And then he just, as sometimes happened, power is intoxicating, and it became craziness. And I like to give Harmeet a little bit of credit, because as we were filing lawsuits, I swear every morning when I would talk to her, she's filing it. She says, "I'll get right back to you. I'm filing another lawsuit against the governor." I mean, it was and people will say, "Well, it's political, it's this or that." No, it's when somebody has crossed the line of your constitutional rights. It's ironic, because the same people who are screaming and yelling about their constitutional rights and their right to protest now were the same people who wanted to throw battery acid at me when I was defending Colin Kaepernick. So I just love the fact of the beauty of the hypocrisy. So,
well, it's the beauty of what would you say? Staying within the confines of the laws, you understand it, right?
Well, it's true. You can have your ox. You can gore the ox as long as it's not yours, or something like that. So
funny.
I got to jump on another court call. Okay. Please have me back.
I will. Let me just say one thing. My dad, Mort Pinsky, used to always say, "It depends on whose ox is being gored." So thank you for. Mark, he's got to go for homage to my dad. Bye, Mark. We'll see you soon.
Wait, I want to hear the Mort Pinsky. Tell me.
He always said, "It depends whose ox is being gored." He always used that phrase. It was in my head as you said it.
I'm with Mort. It depends on whose ox is being gored. Is absolutely. It's this that one saying can get you through life.
I know. We'll talk more about that. It's a whole other.
Look where it got you. Bye.
Love you, Mark.
Love you too, Susan. Right. Bye-bye.
All right. Let me Let's see what you guys are up to here. Please go ahead and react in the restream. I'm
Somebody said, Dr. Drew, you should run for governor, although I wouldn't wish that world on anyone.
Yeah, I know. I watched the governor going through this whole thing, and I thought to myself, most of the way through, God, I'm glad I don't have to be in his shoes.
No kidding.
Most of the way. But
Any
then I ended
ideas
up
of running for office have gone
then
away.
again, I'm a part of the way, most of the way through this pandemic, I've been thinking I don't want to be in my shoes either. So either way, I get the turds thrown at me. Georgia is holding slow and steady, so Georgia looks good. Scroll up to your question, Josette. I don't know if I can find it. There's so many up there. Please repeat it.
I got an interesting email.
Go ahead.
I love listening to all your shows when reporting about the current status of COVID in the state. Would you please remember that it does not represent most of the state? I'm in Florida, and the stats represent only 3 counties.
What
Florida's
states?
huge.
Wait.
She didn't say which county, but she said, I love you and everything, hugs Kathy. But she does kind of have a point. Like, Georgia might be doing better in some places.
I don't understand her point. What's her point?
Just that Florida's huge, and the stats only represent 3 counties.
Right. It's the same thing that Mark was saying, which 50% of the counties in California have 0 cases. 0 cases.
Yeah.
And so why should the counties that have 0 cases be under the same jurisdiction as some local region that has thousands of cases? That's a great question. So we have our Meet Dylan and Mark Geragos are as far apart politically as 2 people I know, and have them teaming up. And this is what I wanted to talk to him about, which is the fact that all of the excesses of this whole experience are going to have to get worked out in the courts.
Right.
That's where it's going to get worked out.
Well, that's why they're being so careful at the top, because they don't want to get sued by the people. I think that's
they're
a personal
getting sued no
opinion.
matter what, so we'll see. I don't know about the N95 alternatives. What do you have? You mean in terms of the cloth mask? Is that what you're saying? I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. I understand early on that we didn't know what we were dealing with, so shut it down made sense. Do we think one played the caution at all? I will tell you that the CDC never recommended shut it down. And what I've always said is, and as Mark sort of gribbed on me for being overly reliant on the CDC, I still say you can trust them, all their directions, their job, they know how to get through these things. They did not recommend shutdown. Now, I'm sure they were happy to see it.
His mic is going in and out. Go close to your mic, Drew. You're going in and out. Oh, you're off.
That's the only way I can do that.
Okay, good.
There's those deep, rich, dark.
Oh, it's better now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you were
Well,
right in and
so
out.
you guys got to keep me.
That's what,
So we now know I've got to be within about 10 inches of the mic.
and you don't need to yell.
Let's see. I'm trying to watch you guys, your questions now. All right, Josette, I did not see your question. I am scrolling up now to see if I can find your question, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. I've got many hundreds of questions here. We're not just looking at Facebook. We're looking at everybody, all the different restreams.
Yeah.
And
Can you scroll up to my question? Let me keep scrolling.
my scroll up doesn't go far enough to find her, as I missed her. I asked her
Ask it again, Josette.
That's what I asked her to do, and if she did, I missed it again because I'm busy scrolling up looking for it before.
I know. Now everybody's asking questions. They all have a lot of questions. So
There's about a 60-second delay.
In the
yeah, it'll come. She'll do it.
yeah. Do I believe in herd immunity? Brian, it's not about believing or not believing. There is a thing called herd immunity when you get to about 60% infectivity. And then the 40% that hasn't been infected doesn't tend to get it. Yeah, why did the overall death rates jump so much? I don't know. There's a lot of different data on the University of Washington site now that is a little bit confusing. There's, for instance, the hospital bed use is different than the number of documented cases. The estimated cases is a brand new number. I don't know where they came up with that. And the death rate suddenly doubled. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with
I heard that
University
they
of
were
Washington.
predicting that it might be like 140,000 by August.
That's what they put in the day before. It was 75,000. So why did they jump that up? So it's difficult to say.
So it would basically double by August.
Let's see where we are now. It's good questions. Let me go to the United States. Again, the states that seem to have most of the difficulty: New Jersey, Connecticut, and
New York.
Massachusetts. New York is resolving. New York is really resolving fast. What did I say? I want to look at the overall number of death rates today. Number of overall deaths today. So it says we're at 134,000. At today, we're at 67,000, so about 70,000. So they're just expecting it to continue up.
But how can that be?
Well, it's just not going to flatten the way they thought it was going to, I guess. We'll have to see. I will eventually get a chance to talk to these guys.
I mean, it's still not that many people on such a huge population. That's pretty.
Michigan. Let's look at Michigan. That's a good question. How is Michigan doing? Michigan.
Yes, we are getting Periscope questions.
So see, this is this crazy thing here where the confirmed infection is 968. The estimated infection is 7,900. So what is that estimated infection number? When you look at the death rate, it's falling. It has certainly plateaued. About 7,000 predicted deaths. The hospital resource use, you seem fine with that. It's on the downslope, but definitely plateaued. Again, flattening the curve was to prevent the surge, prevent the overutilization, the saturation of the hospital resource system. That didn't happen. It almost happened in New York, but it did not happen. So success, job well done. Now let's move to the next phase. We'll see. Georgia has not increased. It's holding steady. Georgia has not increased. South Korea did not shut down. Yes, we don't know that shutdown is different than social distancing and masks. So wear those masks and social distance. If you go to demonstrations, please wear your mask and please social distance, or you could be the source of a little outbreak. Remember,
I was just thinking about this when you guys were talking, how like everybody can walk by my porch at our house, but we can't go to the beach.
I know.
They're all like within 4 feet of me when they walk by.
Now listen, the policies are insane and they exceed constitutional protections. So,
I mean, I don't want to like call them out. I don't care really, but if, you can walk on a sidewalk.
Okay, Jennifer has a great question. Do people with antiphospholipid syndrome have an increased risk? It is not specifically stated as an increased risk, but it has been my experience that people with that, particularly with metabolic syndrome, do very poorly, very poorly. So there is something about that population that should give us a little insight into what this virus is doing. Thus far, I've not seen any good explanation for that. Okay, so I think we got to kind of sort of wrap things up a little bit here.
Somebody told us to get an electric fence.
Flu shots, yeah.
Or shotgun.
Flu shots do not have COVID-19, to my knowledge. Flu shots should still be taken. Let me see if there's anything else. Florida beach is open, but no sitting or loitering. Okay, that seems reasonable. I mean, there's variations on the theme. The point is to be rational with these policies. And we have been irrational with them for quite some time. All right, I'm watching your guys' thread here. Therapeutics, yes, there is a monoclonal antibody that's looking good. I haven't heard anybody that I trust really speak on it yet. But there is monoclonal antibodies. There is the antigen-affected receptor for viral, the way viruses get into the cell. There is still remdesivir, and you got to remember, remdesivir is like AZT. When we had AZT, all we proved was that there's such thing as an antiviral that will stop HIV. That's all we had done. And that's all we've done with remdesivir. We have a antiviral that affects positively the outcomes for COVID-19.
If you catch it right at the beginning.
Now, just like AZT, this will be a platform which we will build off to form multiple other medications of a similar nature and put them in combinations, much like we did with HIV. Now, when the remdesivir is used is still something being discussed. Pretty late in the game, if you use it, it pretty clearly doesn't work. Earlier in the game, it certainly reduces the length of hospitalization.
Something like that?
Sort of like Tamiflu, except it's a much more serious medication. Yes, that's the Bloomberg report about the antibodies that may fight the virus. We don't know yet. They are antibodies that are produced that fight the virus. Whether they'll have clinical utility has to be proven. You got to remember, in biology, just because something is designed a certain way and makes perfect sense, when you actually deploy it in a human system, it does not mean it's going to work. It does not mean it. What are general expectations 1 year from now? I expect to see a vaccine by a year from now. I think we will be in a much better situation. Certainly year plus from now, we will be. Okay, so anything else from you guys? Susan, anything? Do you want to?
My buddy Duke said, free sober support music festival this Wednesday till Sunday at safemusicfestival.com.
Okay. How can they make a vaccine for COVID-19 if there have been a vaccine for COVID? They have a vaccine. They have 3 of them that are already in clinical testing. So how can they make them is not the question. They have made them. And the mRNA study, the mRNA vaccine, my understanding is already at least nearing phase 2 trials. So that's amazing. That is amazing. Okay, so let's
wants to go shopping with me, Drew?
What? Who does?
Susan asked if we could go shopping.
Well, you will be able to because some of these retail stores will be open.
I don't have any money right now, though.
I know that's the problem. See, we should all be trying to support these retail stores, but who has any money right now?
So we're kind of like,
ACE inhibitors are not protecting against COVID. ARBs and ACE inhibitors are not protecting against COVID, but you should stay on them. That's the recommendation now from the.
Although I did get Drew some new T-shirts because his T-shirts are kind of getting saggy.
Mm-hmm.
He needed those.
It's true.
They were on sale.
I appreciate that.
I know. You're special, though.
I'm looking back up through your questions here. See if there's anything. What is an antiphospholipid syndrome? It's kind of complicated. It's an antibody against phospholipids, just like it sounds. It is associated with coagulation abnormalities. The particular phospholipid in COVID is cardiolipin. Is a cardiolipin. I forget which one. And what the physiology of these things are is the biochemistry is very, very complicated. I'm not even sure how it causes the hypercoagulability, but it does. What if a fair percent? I can't see what that says. Today's a hard day. I lost my sister during the Rodney King riots. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry about that. Is it safe to push a vaccine within 1 year? That seems too fast. Personally, that vaccine, I will take it as soon as it becomes available. Cannot come fast enough for me. How
does everybody feel about having some celebrity rehab people on?
So you can respond to.
I'm thinking about having them on, and
she's thinking about bringing back some of our celebrity rehab.
See how they're doing.
Participants, seeing how they are. So what do you guys say? Yes, good idea, bad idea?
I wish Rodney King was still alive.
I know, me too.
He would have the answers.
Well, you know what? He would be a very good source of his daughter. Maybe we get his daughter in here. She's doing great stuff. You want to bring her in? Yeah. I mean, I talk to her all the time, and
I asked him a million.
She's very an inspirational person.
We got to get Rodman. Yeah, somebody said let's get Rodman.
Okay, we'll get
I was thinking Andy Dick. He's sober, apparently.
I wanted to go walk down the beach, Newport Beach, with Dennis Rodman. That was going to be my plan.
Baldwin wants to come on. Daniel Baldwin.
Daniel will come. Daniel's a
probably Mary
guy.
Carey. I bet.
Mary Carey. Let's get her. That'd be good.
I don't know. There's a list of them.
Jenny's coming for a podcast.
Oh, what's his name? Steven Adler texted me right before the show.
Okay.
He wants to come on.
Good. That'd be great.
He sends emojis.
All right, you guys.
I just wonder if we should have them one at a time and catch
up. I mean, not more than one at a time, right?
No, unless they like each other. Could have a little. If it's on Ask Dr. Drew, then we can have them. Couple. You have to tell me. I saw Shelley earlier.
Shelley was here. Maybe I would happily have Shelley or Bob on with.
Dave Navarro, I haven't been able to get in touch with.
Dave is not. We did not treat Dave.
Theo Vaughn is.
Dave's been sober
I know
a long time.
he was on a celebrity rehab. Theo Vaughn was super busy last time I asked him.
Cloth mask. Theo Vaughn is not somebody we treated either.
No, I know, but they're not celebrity rehab. But these are suggestions.
How many people with antiphospholipid with COVID have you seen? I've seen one. Well, I've read about many cases. I have a patient with antiphospholipid who got COVID and died. Boom. And it was horrific.
Shifty would come on.
Horrific. And it was such an out of control septicemic picture that it led me to believe that that's the population. So something something unique is happening in that population. We just don't know what it is yet.
Somebody just said, yes, Shelley and Bob. I know, I'm getting ideas. See, somebody asked me to have Mark Geragos on, and
You've never had Jeremy London.
No, I haven't.
We'll get Jeremy.
We also love
Heidi. Heidi would come on.
Heidi. Oh my God. Can you imagine her right now?
I don't know. Rachel. People are asking for Rachel. She'd come. So that'd be good. We can get some people come on.
Eric Adams would come on.
Eric Adams was from the show Rehab. We should get Eric in here.
He came to your rescue on Twitter one day, and
yeah, Eric's a great guy.
That was really sweet.
Eric, if you remember him from, we had some criticism of Celebrity Rehab when people were saying, well, why did you treat regular people, which is all Bob and I normally did. And we went, okay, let's do a show with regular people. We did it. It was great.
No, Eric Adams, he's a celebrity.
Nope, listen to me.
Am I thinking of the wrong person?
Yes.
Oh.
And we did a show called Rehab, which was just regular people, and nobody watched. You guys didn't watch. So the network would not do any more than that.
Yeah. Sad, though.
Carol Baskin.
Carol Baskin.
Well, Julia Roberts' brother, Eric Roberts.
Eric Roberts. That's who I was thinking.
Yeah, you're not. Eric Adams is from Massachusetts and was in the show Rehab.
Oh, no, I got them mixed up. Sheesh.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was...
Okay. There are some people that we haven't had, though. So it would be really good to get some of the ones we haven't
we'll have
talked to
him
in a long
on.
time.
He was on my podcast, Eric Adams. He came on. He got a psychic reading. It was the highlight of the show. It was really fun to hear about his grandmother.
Which was what?
She was quite the character.
Eric Adams or Eric Roberts?
Eric Adams.
Eric Adams from Massachusetts.
He's from Boston.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he lived.
Now you're confusing me.
I know.
All right. So that is regular people. Yes, that's what we did. What do people that get vaccinated? The percentage of people in the UK and YouTube live around the majority are saying they won't take the vaccine. Well, I cannot get the vaccine fast enough myself.
Sad girl.
Zach wants to know if I ever thought I'd be short and bald like I was in the Midnight Gospel. Which you do remind me, I did not think I would. Yeah, eventually. But please watch Midnight Gospel. Also, go back on Friday and listen to the interview we did with Duncan Trussell.
Yeah,
who's
we
the
just did
brains
it this week. It's
Norman Somerton. I would happily interview Norman. Happily, as you well know.
Somebody said Rogan. How come his name comes up every time?
I don't know.
I mean, we could invite him. Maybe that'll happen. You never know.
Happy to talk to him.
I feel like he doesn't want to. I don't know why.
All right, you guys, let's wrap things up. I got to go do this Fox 11 thing. We're going to be talking to Dr. Oz, and we're going to be talking to the mayor of Laguna Beach. And
nice.
Let's get Mark back in here to finish this conversation, Susan.
He'll be back.
So we'll get him in here.
Yeah, I just called him. I didn't, since Caleb was here and he had the VMix, I knew that I could get somebody to VMix in it. It was very last minute. But
and then we have a request for Ivanka Trump to come in. Good luck with that.
Thanks, you guys. They're all setting the bar really high now. Why don't we just get Trump? Right? Yeah.
Rich and whoever else was talking about Rogan. Jack, thank you for doing that. But get me on the Rogan's podcast. I think that'd be the better thing. That'd be a better use of your time.
Go through Tom Segura.
I really would like to.
I have a feeling that you're going to have to pay Tom
Susan,
Segura.
can you deal with that telephone, please?
What telephone?
The phone that's ringing.
My phone's ringing?
Yes, it's ringing. Yes, it's ringing. Please.
What? Oh, the phone's ringing.
Yes, phone is ringing. And I will wrap things up. But yeah, if you guys can get me on Joe Rogan's podcast, I would love that because I'm a huge fan of his podcast, and I think that makes a better use of our time than him coming on here. So Jordan Harbinger would be a good guest here. Good point. That's a great. Jason Waller, of course, would come in. We've had him many times.
We just had him.
Yeah, we just had him. So he was just here last week. But you can call in after dark when we do an outside on Twitter. Hugh Laurie. I don't know Hugh Laurie, unfortunately. So, all right, you guys, I'm going to wrap this thing up. So I've got to go do the Fox 11 thing. So we thank you so much for being here, and we will be in here again tomorrow. Let me see what time. We'll be in here tomorrow about 2:30-ish. So look for the restream announcement tomorrow around 2:30, and we will. Dan Crenshaw, another good one. I'd love to talk to him.
Dan Crenshaw?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we will see you tomorrow.
Write all these down.
She'll write them down. We'll get them. Thank you.
Bill